Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, everybody. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. We are here in episode 5 of 5 in our series talking about a better way to communicate with our employees, our expensive employees, a better way to engage and understand our people by using technology, specifically AI. Welcome back to our listeners and our guest, Tarek Camille. How you doing?
Wendy, I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. I am going to happy hour right after this podcast. So ask me that in 20 more minutes. Kind of have the rest of the week off a little bit. So I'm super excited. Now, our listeners probably noticed that our radio personality, JC, is not here today. He had personal affairs to deal with. So boo for us. So now I have to be extra animated because we don't have the radio voice. With that said, what I did want to talk about a little bit is more on, driving employee engagement so that we're driving people to stay rather than leave. I have a statistic here from Work Institute, and their retention report stated that the U.S. voluntary turnover rate in 2020 was 22.5%. I know from personal experience and a lot of fires that I had to put out in 2020, 2021 because of the COVID pandemic, voluntary turnover rate was way higher than just, 22.5%. What's been your experience, Tarek?
I think it's the Holy Grail, honestly. I really feel like we are entering into an era. And I don't know how old your listeners are, but I remember back in the 90s where marketing was billboards and radio and TV and print, and we couldn't measure any of those things, right? It was like Mad Men. Nobody really knew what they were doing, and they weren't really held accountable, kind of like the weatherman. And so it was also not that valued within the organization. Then the internet shows up, and all of a sudden we can start measuring the effectiveness of our marketing initiatives. Guess what? We now have every company has a chief marketing officer. There was no chief marketing officer in 1993. It just didn't exist because they couldn't show their value. And why I tell this story is that I think that is where HR is headed now. I think the ability for us to show your value. So let's just say you're the average company, 22.5% attrition. And HR, through all these different levers, let's say you were able to reduce that to 15 or 10. Depending on the size of the organization, that is millions and millions of dollars flowing to the bottom line of that organization. And HR, who often is thought of as a cost center, like faux attorneys, keep us out of court, that kind of thing, the hall police. That's how they're referred to internally. They don't see your value. They don't see that you're a competitive advantage to win. Now, would anyone ever say that about marketing or sales or operations? Of course not. They're a competitive advantage for our company. Where HR is headed, because of technology and data and analytics and understanding, I think that is the next evolution. It'll be the next big thing in the corporate landscape. Just like marketing changed how they were viewed, I think that is coming for HR because the cost of losing your talent is so high.
Yeah, I think it's actually partially already here, especially since the pandemic. Many companies pre-pandemic, companies would just throw chump change at recruiting, at engagement, at benefits, at this, that, and the other. Oh, employee A, you don't like it, then leave. Oh, employee B, too bad. You find another choice elsewhere. Well, the pandemic hit and all those employees said, yeah, I will. And now I could tell you personally that my business as an HR consultant and a management trainer has completely changed in the past couple of years, because employers were finally the ones that were like, whoops, let me eat my words. I do need you, HR. I do need those employees. What am I doing wrong? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. What we've been telling you for the past 15 years, that you need to train managers, not just give them a promotion. You're not doing anybody a favor. You need to communicate with your employees. You need to care about your employees. You need to make them feel like they belong there and that you want them there, and that you're really giving them true feedback, not once a year. That once a year feedback, oh, drives me batty. I'm like, why even bother? Why even bother? If you're not telling people all the time how they're doing, good or bad, then don't even bother. Just, write them a check. And write yourself, a negative check, because they're about to walk out the door, or worse than walking out the door, worse than the retention stats that we've been talking about, is that an employee, what I call, quits and stays. And so they say, all right, well, you haven't fired me. You have decent benefits. You don't do any feedback, so you're not holding me accountable. I hate it here, but I'm going to take your money until I get fired or until I find something else, but I don't really have a motivation to leave. And this is where, folks, the internal communication is so important. I'm going to throw a few other statistics out here. This is from the Conference Board. Disengaged employees could cost organizations over $450 billion a year in lost wages, retraining, loss of profit, loss of sales, and so much more. And getting back to communications from Workforce, their statistic is that 60% of companies do not have a long-term strategy for their internal communications.
I believe it.
No shock to you, right?
Afterthought. No, it is an afterthought.
It's 100% an afterthought.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think with COVID, so many negatives came out of COVID, but one of the positives, it forced employers to really understand the value of their people, and that we can't take them for granted. And so it accelerated a lot of things that should have been happening anyway in the employer-employee relationship, like remote work. If you don't trust me, why did you hire me?
Yep.
Right? These kinds of conversations should have been happening all along, but COVID forced their hand. And I see that continuing to accelerate. But the data that HR is now being equipped with, and a lot of that is driven through internal communication, can help them show their value in a much more unique way than ever before.
How can our listeners connect with you and your company to get more information so that we can continue this conversation and make sure that all of our employees think our companies are amazing? And not only the fact that, oh, I haven't been fired yet, but I actually enjoy what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I know what my goals are. I know where I'm at in achieving them. And my manager actually knows my name.
Bar is so low, isn't it, Wendy?
It is.
It's so low. They can definitely come out to our website. So it's CERKL. I know it's a terrible spelling. CERKL.com. Thank you.
I think it's cool.
But somebody likes it. It's pronounced circle. The idea is a feedback loop. That's the AI and machine learning component to what we do. There's a lot out there. And if anyone's interested, go check it out, of course. We'd love to show you what we do. It's really reasonable. So a lot of people look at what we do and say, gosh, that's got to be expensive. But remember, I started this for my kids' school. This is just how work should be, which is our tagline. Or they can reach me on LinkedIn. I love engaging in these kind of nerdy conversations. It's Tarek, last name Kamil. I think I'm those on the LinkedIn, as the kids like to say.
Hey, LinkedIn is like one of my favorite pastimes. There's so much information out there and so many good people that are just giving away information. And so it could be overwhelming, folks, but start by connecting with me, Wendy Sellers, the HR lady, and then with Tarek as well. I want to leave everybody before we wrap up with one more statistic to really drive this point home about communication being so important at work. This is a Salesforce statistic, and it says that 86% of employees and executives cite lack of collaboration or ineffective communication for workplace failures. So that's the bottom line. That's people walking out the door, people staying, things not getting done, brand failures, you name it. Please don't be that company. We hope that this information has been very helpful. Thanks for joining us and take care.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.